Welcome, everybody. I'm Kathy Douglas, and on behalf of myself and the team that helped to put this event together, Kathy Toivenan, Deborah Laforet, and Ted Dodd, thank you for being here. It is reassuring to know that this gathering has met a need. So far, you've thought it was something you wanted to come to, so thank you so much. Please offer in the chat any way you want to introduce yourself or say hello or what you like to do as a way of acknowledging where you're at, or whether that's a treaty or a land acknowledgement, or share your name and details that you'd like to do that in that way too, because we can save the chat and that helps us to remember who was here and what folks had to say as way of introduction. If you have any experience of struggle with the technology or things that just don't feel right, or you need some support, I hope you could reach out to myself directly or Deb Laforet, I'm going to suggest, in the chat privately to us, and we'll see what we can do to help you. Or after this event, if there's things you wanted to give us as input, positive or not so positive, we'd love to hear about that. That helps do these events and make them what is needed for folks as we go along. As Deborah has already said, we started to record this. We did ask for folks to mention if they weren't sure they wanted that, so we have not heard that, and we are going to record it, and we would like to be able to post the content part, not the breakout rooms, on the DUCC website for folks who were not able to be here. So I'm finished, and once again, thanks for being here, and I'm going to pass it over to Kathy, I believe.
Is that screen large enough for people? Okay.
Can you make it any bigger by just expanding it?
Okay, to figure out, not that technically. Is there something I should do?
Well,
Go to the bottom right hand of the screen and drag that little arrow over towards 100%.
Oh,
People should also have the option of making things larger on their own screen. If you look at the top of your Zoom screen, it says view options. So you can also manage if from your own end to a certain degree.
great team.
okay, thank you. So we're going to invite everyone to listen to this litany. There are 5 of us who will be taking part in offering the scriptures and a bit of reflection and the prayer. And the themes of the litany will be followed up with, as Ted offers his reflections on envisioning diaconia in a variety of ways. So let's be centered and grounded as we take time now to draw together in words of wisdom and reflection and prayer. As Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishers. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people."
We gather today as diaconal folk who have chosen to follow the way of Christ. We seek through our actions and our words to encourage and mentor others who are open vocations that embrace the way of Christ.
Spirit of Christ, help us to support those who seek to discern the depth and breadth of the call to diaconia.
A certain woman named Lydia, a worshiper of God, was listening to us. She was from the city of Thyatira and a dealer in purple cloth. God opened her heart to listen eagerly to what was said by Paul. Paul went to them, and because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them and they worked together. By trade, they were tent makers.
Merchants and tent makers, fishers and carpenters, counselors and nurses, community workers and physicians, teachers and town planners, environmentalists, farmers, accountants, communicators, diaconal ministries of justice and service, pastoral care and education are lifted up in many and diverse vocations.
Freeing and liberating Spirit, expand our vision of diaconia. Open us to discover ways to widen the circle to include the many expressions of service and justice, education and compassion that are the hallmarks of diaconia.
But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, Jesus, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called to one of the servants and asked what was going on. The servant replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound. Then the older brother became angry and refused to go in.
The diaconal community is not immune to conflict and misunderstanding, divisions, and bitter disputes.
Spirit of healing and forgiveness, we pray for the courage to wrestle with our divisions, the compassion to tend the wounds we have created, and the humility to admit our mistakes. Through your justice and love, bind us together and bring healing to the fractures in our communities.
Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it may cost all you have, get understanding.
In a world where slogans and cheap advice, lies, and misinformation masquerade as truth, we yearn for wisdom. In the complexity of life, we seek those who can guide us and teach us in the ways of Sapatia.
Sapantia, Spirit of wisdom, thank you for the scholarship of those in the diaconal community who inspire and teach us to be open to your wisdom, a wisdom that is rooted in the earth, shining in the heavens, and running deep in our veins. Sapantia, may we give up our foolish ways and walk in wisdom's path, stepping into your future of hope and possibility.
Let justice roll down like water, and justice like an ever-flowing stream.
We live in a world parched by so many injustices: hunger, violence, racism, classism, homophobia, poverty, and creation's degradation.
Spirit of justice, we pray for diaconal ministries engaged in liberating your people to dwell together in peace and freedom, harmony and respect. With them and with all creation, we cry out to you, let justice roll down like water and justice like an ever-flowing stream.
For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many.
As members of diaconia, we are scattered across this nation and around the world. We seek communion and community to sustain and center us, and to remind us that we are not alone in our work and witness.
Embracing Spirit, draw us into relationships where we can forge communities of wholeness and health, and live by your economy of grace. Bless our diaconal communities worldwide. Bless the strengths of our different faith traditions and confessions, and unite us as we work and pray together for your vision of shalom.
May it be so. All right. Okay. So we're going to move now into a wonderful presentation that Ted has planned for us. And this is rooted in Ted's work as president of DUCC. And I don't want to take any more time because I think Ted's got a lot of rich information and reflections to share with us. I think we all know who Ted is as a member of DUCC, and it has been a great, it's been a great blessing for us to have him as president of DUCC while he's a member of DUCC. So without further ado, Ted, I hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Since 2016, I've been privileged to be connected to the DUCC Board of Directors, Diacony of the Americas and the Caribbean, and I've served as your DUCC rep since 2017 and served as president since 2018. And it's been a really rich time. I feel like my worldview and friendships have certainly broadened, and my sense of diaconal identity and vocation has been deepened. And so thank you for the opportunity to serve in this capacity and to share some of my learnings today. To prepare for today, I reviewed each of the 12 communities associations of DUCC quickly for those not immersed in this ecumenical international diaconal federation. There's one world federation, but it's divided into 3 regions: Diaconia region Africa, Europe, Diaconia or DRE, Diaconia Asia Pacific or DAP, and then there's us, which is DUCC. Some pictures there for you. So in this organization, there are 5 Lutheran communities or associations. There are 3 Methodists. There are 2 Anglican Episcopal organizations. There's 1 Presbyterian, and then there's us, the DUCCs. There are 6 groups in the United States, 4 in Canada, 1 in Brazil, and 1 in the many countries of the Caribbean. The groups differ in theology, liturgical practice, history, and cultural understandings. Some folks are consecrated into the diaconate, some are ordained, and we, of course, are commissioned. And what description of their ministries, it varies too. So in some, it's word and service, others it's word, service, compassion, and justice, and we, of course, are education, service, and pastoral care. Some of them are called deacons, some are called deaconesses, and some are men in the Methodist Church are called home missioners. And we, I think, are one of the last to use the title diaconal minister. It's being faded out in a couple of denominations where they used it previously. But around these differences is a common spirit and a sense of call, a commitment to the margins and those on the periphery of society, a collective and important history. There's a growing critique of the traditional images of service and towel and basin, although some still cherish those traditional images. There's exploration of the images of bridge, go-between, ambassador, and the image of connecting the church and the world. And there's a shared sense of community in the advocacy for the diaconate and our mutual love of the vocation. So what I did was review the 12 communities or associations and then pulled together 6 themes that emerged for me when I was thinking about the communities of DUCC. So their call and vocation, more open membership, advocacy for the diaconate, scholarship, justice, and community. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about each of these themes. And then after I finish my comments about the 6 themes, you're going to be asked to pick one of these groups to go into a breakout room and discuss the questions there. And we'll discuss the technology of that later. So let's start with call and vocation. This passage is, of course, the quintessential invitation passage from the Gospels, the fishers of people. And the verses bring to mind various call and vocation hymns. John Bell's "Will You Come and Follow Me?" I have called you by my name in more voices. And I'm told the favorite hymn when people do church surveys is "Here I Am, Lord." To me, our diaconal call remains a sacred thing. I'm passionate about the diaconate and our vocation, and I would love for more people to share in the magic of this calling. The church needs diaconia, and traditionally, historically, diaconia hasn't been the church's primary focus. And in my analysis, diaconia has taken a backseat to other issues and interests as important as they can be. How do we better share our passion for the diaconate? The United Methodist Church has been in turmoil, and they're in a process of going through a messy ecclesiological divorce. Over 6,000 congregations have disaffiliated from the denomination, fighting over two-spirited LGBTQIA+ rights. Around 25% of the United Methodist Church have cut ties with the United Methodist Church. And under that cloud, the order of deaconesses and home missioners has grown their numbers significantly. They hold discernment events, 2-hour virtual events, quarterly, in-person weekend events, gatherings geared for specific cultural groups. And as a result, despite COVID, despite this dust-up fight they're in, the deaconess and home missioners of about 300 people, about the same size as DUCC, currently has 75 new candidates. How might DUCC and CCS and Sandy Soto work on our recruitment strategies and sharing of the good news of diaconal ministry? In 2016, the Association for Episcopal Deacons started a group specifically for those 40 and under. They set up a blog. They made an effort to promote participation in Christian communities and long-term service projects. So there's organizations like the Episcopal Service Corps, the Young Adult Service Corps, a community of St. Anselm in London, a Young Adult Life and Leadership Initiative, which is an ecumenical project. How might DUCC partner with organizations like that in Canada, like the Go Project and others, to encourage the diaconal vision? So if you want to go in this breakout room, here's some focus questions. What stories do you have about your own diaconal vocation, of nurturing the call in others? And what ideas do you have for intentionally encouraging people to consider diaconia? So as I'm going on to the second theme, one more open membership. As DUCCs, we train at CCS or Sandy Soto and others came to diaconal ministry. Other paths, Kathy Toivenan went to Emmanuel. A bunch of you went to the Western-based field program. Catherine Anderson went to VST. These programs demand rigorous preparation, some years of training. And most of us end up working for the church in some capacity. Often it gets called solo ministry. Those who don't are often treated as aberrations, as if they left ministry. Questions are raised about accountability. Those who envision working outside the church are not really encouraged, and they can experience roadblocks to being commissioned. At the same time, churches are closing, statistics are declining, and questions are being raised about the future of paid pensioned positions in the church. Two figures in the book of Acts supported their ministry by other means. Lydia sold purple cloth and Paul made tents. What if we as DUCS contemplated a broader vision of diaconal ministry? The Lutheran Diaconal Association is a pan-Lutheran organization. They relate to 8 or 9 different Lutheran denominations. But it is the LDA, the association, that consecrates their deacons and deaconesses, not the church bodies. The LDA has 2 communities, the Deaconess Conference and the Community of Lutheran Deacons for the men. And each of these expressions of the diaconate, they are people living out their ministries, nurse practitioners, and some of them are pastors, musicians, chaplains, lawyers, administrators. There's a little video I'm going to be sending you a copy of the PowerPoint, but it's really well done, and maybe Doug could think about doing something like that for us, because it's really artfully done and thoughtfully done. In the United Methodist Deaconesses and Home Missioners, they are a lay order. And they are under the umbrella of the United Methodist United Women in Faith, which was formerly the United Methodist Women. And their diaconal preparation consists of less courses and assignments than we are used to. But they have training in other fields to build on.
I am a deaconess. I had a stroke and brain surgery about 16 years ago. And during that time of exploring God in new ways and meeting God in new ways, I felt this nudge to learn more about that. And now I meet with all types of people who are seeking and searching for God in their life in various ways. And we do that primarily using the body that God gave us. One of my favorite groups of women that I get to work with in the studio are survivors of sex trafficking. This private class is an opportunity for these women to come and just connect with their bodies again. And it's a trauma-informed opportunity. I've been trained in trauma-sensitive yoga. As deaconesses and home missioners, we are committed to ministries of love, justice, and service.
I am a home missioner. Part of my ministry is to ensure that our schools basically empower, equip, accept, and honor and love everybody who walks in every school we have in our district with dignity and respect. That's part of love, justice, and service. As a home missioner and, as an equity, diversity, inclusion program specialist, I really have to create a more oversized table with a mic for everybody. The Deaconess Home Missioner Order equipped me to be bolder and to see everyone I'm serving. The foundation it provides, the support of the community, and knowing that God is at work in all places granted me the courage to speak out and act whenever necessary. Action is vital as a Deaconess and Home Missioner.
I am a deaconess. My ministry focuses on health living and education for girls through the foundation that I started in 2019. It's called WEMA Health Foundation. There had never been a deaconess or home missioner from Africa region. So as deaconess, I feel like I'm a bridge between the church and the community. And so I work on social issues in the community, but in relationship, in partnership with the church. I take the gospel beyond the pulpit, beyond the pew, beyond our church doors to the community and make it a living gospel.
I am a home missioner. I teach critical thinking and writing, and we work with students who are immigrants, first generation, or who are facing a variety of challenges becoming college students, working here and working in my church. We're looking at ways to make Park Avenue Church a place where everyone is welcome. And so part of that means looking at worship, looking at music, looking at interactions, perhaps training people to do some things better, to have some sensitivities they haven't had in the past, to heighten some sensitivities, to maybe be uncomfortable for a little bit. But on the road to doing this, we'll all become a better church and a church of radical belonging. I believe that truly fits into the call of Deaconess Home Missioner of love, justice, and service.
The Episcopal deacons are non-stipendiary. There are over almost 100 dioceses in the United States and 30 in Canada. And so some bishops are supportive of the permanent or vocational diaconate, and others are reported to not be so much. And so each of the formation programs is different in each of the dioceses, and it varies widely. Again, I would say, it would be safe to say, it's not as fulsome as we are used to. Typically, they're in a non-stipendiary relationship with the church and support themselves financially through other work, or it's often a pension. Many of them are retirees. And in Brazil, the deacons there took their seminary-based training, like they went to seminary, and but they're looking at opening up their community to include a wider variety of deacons, and mostly they're talking about social workers at this point. There are drawbacks to less testing of call, of course, less education, less accountability to the church, and perhaps even confusion over parallel professional standards. But what might be the beauty of expanding our vision of diaconal ministry to include folks working in the community and honoring their work as ministry? What would it look like to start a lay order? Or imagine less demanding training? What would it look like in the United Church of Canada to open diaconal ministry to a broader definition? What would be the pluses? What would be the drawbacks? A third theme, advocacy for the diaconate. None of us would question that the history of diaconal ministry involves stories of being seen as second class or lower than. We constitute a minority, and the majority ministry is too often seen as real ministry. Too frequently, diaconia is regarded as not essential, an optional extra, and that lack of respect, marginality, and always having to explain can wear one down. And that can lead to feelings of defensiveness, resentment, bitterness, frustration, and tiredness. And like grief work, no one wants to stay in these emotions, but no one should respond by snapping their fingers and saying, get over it. These feelings need to be acknowledged and lamented as we journey toward creativity, generosity, hopefulness, and a sense of humor. We carry a lot of complex contradictions and ambiguity in the faith. Crucifixion and resurrection, a yet not yet kingdom, Jesus as the Lion of Judah and the Lamb of God. When I think about the biblical reality of resentment and the challenge of moving out of it, I think of the two stories of Martha and her anger at her sister Mary, the older brother and his resentment of the celebration of the prodigal. I was at a Zoom meeting of the Wesley Diaconal Community of the Methodist Church of the Caribbean and the Americas. And their theme was Elijah hiding in the cave. And they didn't focus on that still small voice or the earthquake, wind, and fire, but on the voice of God saying, "What are you doing here?" In discussion, one person responded tearfully, "I don't know what I'm doing here." This person felt squeezed into the ministry of what they call the presbyter. It was not leaving time or energy to live out their diaconal call in the community. And a lot of pain was expressed from a number of different people. How do we as a diaconal community honor the hurt, but find ways to move toward the positive? This is Helen Morose Malieu, and she's in the US Virgin Islands, and she gave a speech to a bunch of her colleagues who aren't in the diaconate, and very articulate, but very carefully worded.
Bishop Everald Galbraith, Reverend Jacqueline Liddell, Dr. Hubert Moquette, Mistress Muriel Smith, colleagues in ministry, I greet you in the name of Christ, our servant leader, who instituted the towel and basin ministry. I share with you today not only from my personal experience, but shared concerns and observations of some of the other members of the Wesley Diaconal community. Perhaps as we think back to the days of the ministry of the deaconesses across our region, those of us old enough to recall would immediately think of those devout, resolute, and committed women of God, identified by their beige-colored uniforms, who served the church by reaching out to persons in community, many unchurched, offering opportunities for inclusion and training that gave many on the margins, as well as those already in the church, a sense of purpose and belonging. Their ministry to the young and the women of the church allowed for spiritual growth and commitment to God that went beyond what could be achieved through Sunday preaching. So their work reinforced the work of the then ministers, resulting in the strong church that we have inherited, the remnant of which we still benefit from and are now in the process to revive. However, with the passage of time and the evolution of society, resulting in the church no longer being the center of the community, but now just one of the competitors in society for the hearts and loyalty of even those who are a part of our faith community, we find ourselves in uncharted waters and facing situations for which our time at seminary did not prepare us. So in many ways, we are learning on the job and evolving. As deacons, we seek to maintain the focus of the diaconate, fulfill our diverse callings, and be the bridge between the world and the church. Deacons, being the hands and feet of the church on the ground and out in community, are called to adapt to cultural and contextual realities in different ways to that of the presbyters. Our challenges include the fact that we do not fit into a mold that is as clearly defined and understood as the role of the presbyter. We are sometimes misunderstood, as much of our work does not produce easily measurable short-term results. Many fail to appreciate the behind-the-scenes activity and work in Christian education happening at both circuit and congregational levels, as deacons are involved in training, offering support to those engaged in teaching and nurturing the young in the congregations and schools, while reaching out to others through community-based projects and programs which may not be directly connected to the church, but which allow our presence to be experienced in the wider community. Another challenge faced by deacons is the lip service paid to the understanding of teamwork and colleagueship. There is a subtle and sometimes more blatant sense of territorial protectiveness, which causes some deacons to feel that presbyters with charge over congregations are really not keen to have deacons interacting with the organizations in those congregations. If the commissions are to work effectively, then deacons need to feel that the presbyters are not threatened by their presence. In fact, the work of the deacon is the very catalyst to ensure that the purposes of the commissions are brought to bear fruit within the life of the congregations. Deacons are cognizant of the fact that circuits have particular needs and expectations of ministers. The shortage of presbyters across the connection has also meant that many deacons serve congregations in pastoral roles, thus blurring the lines even further, especially for the laity who understand the title Reverend in a particular way, making it more difficult for them to grasp the difference in the roles. Though many deacons are less amicable towards serving as de facto presbyters, some deacons more easily embrace congregational appointments. We understand the realities of our staffing shortage, and our desire is to serve, to ensure that pastoral presence in every congregation is experienced by the members. Most of our congregations have large female populations, and with the deacon population at this point being women, persons sometimes reach out to the female minister, feeling they may be better understood and would have a more empathetic air. This is for some presbyters a challenge, as they feel congregants should come to them first. Another challenge is seeking to balance congregational responsibilities while still fulfilling our call in areas of Christian education and through the ministry and mission and outreach programs of the circuit. It means that many deacons find themselves even more stretched as they seek to meet circuit needs while remaining true to their call. What is good? The fact that our church structure has made space for the work of the deacon to be enabled so as to strengthen the work of the church alongside the presbyters. What needs to change? The need to fill stations has usurped the need for the unique but indispensable role of the diaconal ministry in circuits. And thus we have a system where square pegs are expected to fit into round holes. Greater attention needs to be paid to the gifts and skills that the diaconate offer to the church, as best as possible to ensure that appointments and stations match, so as to ensure that both the needs of the church and the skills of the clergy teams are best utilized. This we know is no easy feat, but it is a necessary consideration and good practice in human resource management. There needs to be a change also in the lip service paid to the concept of colleagueship, and to ensure greater understanding of the clergy and congregants as to the nature of the roles of deacons and how those can be best made manifest in each circuit's unique context. Circuit deacons then support the work on the ground after a sermon is proclaimed and Bible studies held, giving opportunity for persons to put the word that they have heard and learned into action. It is only when this understanding of partnership in ministry is embraced that we will enable God's work to prosper. Deacons then must have a sense that their ministry is of equal importance to that of the presbyters and not be made to feel like second-class citizens and as if they are intruding on the territory of others as they seek to carry out the work both at circuit level and by working with groups within the congregations. Thank you.
Marcy's on this committee, the Diaconia Education Committee, and we've sponsored 2 conversations with diaconal educators. One was at lunch in Minneapolis when we were there for the assembly, and one was recently in January on Zoom. At the first one, I'm told that the conversation diverted the discussion from diaconal formation and education and dissolved into a cry of irritation about the church's lack of support and understanding of the diaconate. And in the second gathering, via Zoom, the need for advocacy was identified as a major concern. I'm convinced that communication about diaconal ministry will always be an ongoing issue. As people who are not the norm, and as ministers who insist on being prophetic, we will always be a little bit of a burr under the saddle. I was at one Episcopalian gathering, and you know how groups of animals are sometimes named, like a murder of crows or a parliament of owls? This person suggested that deacons should be called a disturbance of deacons. So if you go into this breakout room, what stories do you have of misunderstanding or hurtfulness related to being in diaconal ministry? What further steps do we need to take to advocate for vocational identity? So this Proverbs section talks about wisdom. And so I'm relating that to scholarship. I know that scholarship is not everyone's thing. Academics are sometimes legitimately charged with elitism, or that they're hard to follow or understand. Their heads are in the clouds. They use big words. They wrestle with concepts that baffle, or deal in esoteric or obscure things that don't really matter, or are deemed just boring. Their ivy-covered ivory towers are not deemed practical, and diaconal ministers like to be practical and get things done. In 1952, Kurt Lewin wrote that there's nothing more practical than a good theory. Theory should provide new ideas for understanding or conceptualizing a situation, provide new avenues for dealing with a problem or issue. Scholarship should gather facts or information that lead to detailed coherence of a subject. I was in Brazil in January and had a number of conversations about their respected education and social justice scholar, Paulo Freire. And one of his main criticisms of most education is that it reflects a banking system where learners are envisioned as empty vessels that need to be filled with the information and wisdom that the teachers possess. And he lobbied for a praxis model of action and reflection. Reflection offers the chance to ponder, to stop the patterns of doing, to analyze, to discern carefully, and even to pray. We have people who are doing this thinking about diaconia. There's lots of books. There's Margaret Ann Crane's book about the 25th anniversary of the United Methodist Church. Suzanne Epting's book about the 7 waves of the Episcopal diaconate, a history of the Presbyterians, called Up from the Bottom. That's in Canada, Presbyterians in Canada. Ormond Platter's a noted scholar, and Michael Jackson edited this book after organizing a conference, the Diaconate in Ecumenical Perspective. Courses are offered. Oh, sorry, this book, which is going to come out at the end of the year, is being organized by these 4 people, and there'll be 20 different authors with 20 different chapters of various aspects of the diaconate. So look for that book. There's courses that are offered. Louise Williams offers her course online. The United Methodist Deaconess and Home Missioners offer a Theology of Mission course. CCS, of course, offers all its learning circles. And there's a brilliant course offered every year by the Deaconess community of the ELCA, called, which is the J term, but it's the Spirituality and History of Diaconia. And I took it in 10 years ago, and it was a brilliant course. And they waived the tuition, and all I have to do is get there. DUCC has organized its Mondays in May, and it's been a rich, we've done it the last 3 years, and we're organizing the 4th one for this month, this May. So I encourage folks to be part of that. Most of the communities, our associations have statements that they come out. Some of them, like this one from the ELCIC and the IROMA report for the Anglicans and the Episcopalians, deacon competencies, talk specifically about those of us who are in the diaconate. And then there's others like this Lutheran World Federation one, Diaconia in Context, and the Call to Transformation from the World Council of Churches, that talk more broadly about diaconia as a mark of the church, and frankly leave those of us in the diaconate kind of rendered invisible. But they're worth reading just to find out what they don't say about us. Online resources, the International Society for Research and Study of Diaconia and Christian Social Practice has an open access journal called Diaconia, and it's part of their work. And this International Handbook of Ecumenical Diaconia is you can download it for free. It's 750 pages, so you better print it on both sides of the page. And there's some 100 different articles, more than 100 different articles about diaconia in this book. There's conferences. The Ready has the conference. They had one in Oslo, and Marcy went and presented a paper last year. And the Diaconia World Federation is having their assembly in 2025 in Tanzania, and the conference that Michael Jackson organized in Regina that Laurie Stewart went to as the lone United Church person. It was a conference that was Anglicans, Orthodox, and Roman Catholic deacons all talking about diaconia. And of course, we have our own DUCCs who do study. Karen Douglas analyzed the church's apology to disjoined women. Laurie Stewart wrote about the spiral reflection. Mary Ann McFarland looked at the history of deaconesses in the United Church. And Marcy will be working on diaconal pedagogy in her dissertation. And there's others. That's a short list. If you want to talk about scholarship in the breakout rooms, what biblical, theological, or symbolic images shape your understanding of diaconia and informs your ministry? What areas of diaconia would you be interested in studying, learning, or reading about? And what can DUCC do to encourage intentional conversation about and study of diaconia? The communities of DUCC, and DUCC is a federation of those communities, are working on being agents that facilitate Amos's vision of justice rolling down like water. This amazing woman, Sister Ramona Daly Navarro of the deaconess community of the ELCA, is very involved, alongside a number of her sisters, deaconesses, in the rebirth of Martin Luther King's Poor People campaign, a national call for moral revival. In 2019, the deaconesses community voted unanimously to endorse this campaign addressing racism and poverty. In August of 2021, from a wheelchair, Sister Mona was marching in a demonstration, and that elderly, vibrant woman and other sisters were arrested that day. I feel humbled by knowing this courageous friend. Some of you who are in Minneapolis will remember that she danced for us. It was a stunning experience. The other groups are engaged in actions toward justice and peacemaking. The United Methodist Deaconess and Home Missioners last month released a letter to President Biden demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. We're organizing as DOTAC this event, Diakonia Overcoming Violence Exchange, DOVE, and this year it will be in October. It will be held at the Texas-Mexico border, dealing with immigration and refugee issues. DOTAC has been involved in 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Britain has been on the planning team for that, and also posting for Thursdays in Black. DOTAC has also had a number of racial justice events. Marlene was involved in that too, and we had a virtual Kairos blanket event and other events focusing on the impact of colonialism on Indigenous peoples. The deaconesses of the Lutheran Deaconess Conference have formed a social and ecological justice affinity group, and in December for Advent, they decided that they'd been reading too many white authors, and they decided to read this book on the spirituals for Advent, written by a Black author. Eric Tusking is the chair of the World Justice Committee, and they focus their work on climate change, and they'll be hosting a series of webinars in March, April, and July. So if you want to go into this group, what justice issues are you passionate about? How do you see justice as a part of your ministry? And is there anything we can do as an organization to address justice issues as a DUCC community? We know this passage from Corinthians well. It's an evocative image of a church being an inclusive body which is respectful of each person. And clearly, Paul was writing to a church that was not being inclusive or respectful of others. I consider this passage a radical message. It's not some platitudinous Hallmark card. If we are to honor one another, that demands a lot. Back in the day, I was doing a lot of youth work, and I led a Bible study on this passage and asked the teens to arrange themselves across the church basement, placing themselves on an imaginary body where they saw their strengths to be. The head was at one end of the room for the eyes and ears and mouths, and the feet were at down the other end of the room for the doers and the activists. And each adolescent was asked to share why they were standing in that position and what body part they were thinking about. And the last person to go was this unpolished palooka of a guy who said, "I'm a little toe. I may seem unimportant to you, but if I wasn't here, you'd miss me." Community is not always easy. It can be great to be supported in hard times when discerning something or when you need encouragement. But community can be a struggle when we don't feel an affinity. Parties can get into conflict, and the tension and stress of that can be huge. But in the end, I would contend that community is worth it. My friend Jonah was the coordinator of the deacons community in the Brazilian Lutheran Church. In January, his term ended in this position, and his work was celebrated at the community gathering I was at last month. People were sincerely effusive in their praise for his time in this role. Several people spoke emotionally about the fact that he visited them or he contacted them and no one else ever had. Many mentioned they had been grown away from the diaconal community, and he reached out to invite them back, and that made a huge difference to them. One of them, Luciana, who's holding the candle, was elected the new coordinator to succeed Jonathan. The two communities of the LDA gather separately, men and women, but weekly on Monday nights to pray their diaconal litany and to visit and catch up. The Wesley Diaconal Community communicates via WhatsApp, and they have one account for informational kinds of piece and another account just for visiting and telling people how they're doing. The ELCA has the words intentional community right in their mission statement. DUCC hosts a monthly prayer gathering on the first of most months, and I've found these gatherings to be holy, blessed space. And this statement was written for the Diaconia World Federation to share our hopes for the organization. I wonder if somebody would read. Kathy, would you read? Kathy Toivenan, would you read this for us?
Diaconia offers an intentional and ecumenical community of diaconal friendship, connecting us in diversity and commonality. Diaconia broadens our worldview and deepens our sense of diaconal vocation. Diaconia reminds the Church of God's call to service, justice, compassion, and peace for creation, and assists us in living out our ministries in the world with vision and hope. The Church is not the Church without diaconia.
So we have many connections as DUCC, the biennial national gatherings, Zoom events like this one, and regions gather in a variety of different ways. However, our participation is voluntary. You belong if you come, but most don't. And where are the folks who were once involved or left after a conflict? What does DUCC community mean to you, and what stories do you have of diaconal connection that have been meaningful for you? What do we need to do as a DUCC to promote community?